All right, well, first of all, let me say, I'm gonna go ahead and start. You guys don't have to, but let me say that I don't really have to do this. I'm not doing it for me. I'm actually doing it for anybody who doesn't know the facts of the case. When I say facts, I'm talking about just the witnesses, where they were and what they said. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not going to refute conspiracies, and I'm not going to promote it. I'm just going to simply give you guys the facts, and you guys do what you want. So to start, we're going to start at the end down there. So one street down is Denver. Just across the street, in the first house on the left, Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith were in the front yard. All right. Jimmy Burt saw a fellow walking on this side of the street, walking this way, that he says was the same guy who would later shoot the police officer. Bill Smith didn't see him, but Jimmy Burt did. So you got the guy walking this way. In my opinion, he was totally walking west on 10th. You've got the patrol car coming this way, and Domingo Benavides was coming up Denver, which is just one street down right here. He took a left and was driving this way on 10th. He said the first thing he noticed was the patrol car pulled over right here, and the fella on the sidewalk was walking over to the car to talk to the officer. And he was about at this point, about 15 feet from the patrol car. He said the officer, he heard the shot, scared the hell out of him, and he swerved his truck over and pulled over right over here and ducked down, behind his door. Really close. And Hella Markham, obviously. So if you go to the corner over here, so Hella Markham, I'll wait till these cars pass. Let these cars pass. So right over here on the corner, on the other side of the street, Hella Markham was coming down. She lived one block up. She's walking down Patton. She's standing right there on the corner. She saw the patrol car cruise across the intersection. She got ready to go and cross. She saw a couple of vehicles coming, no doubt Jack Tatum and Benavides, both of them in their vehicles. So she waited. Tatum went on through. So Benavides hears the shots and swerves. Okay. Markham sees I can take one witness at a time. So Markham sees the man walk over and start talking through the vent window, or the window. She really couldn't say which window. And she said it was a casual conversation, no big deal. And then she said that the officer got out and very casually, not even in a hurry, just very cool, calm, collected, walked to the front of the patrol car. She said the man stepped back off the street, back to the sidewalk, and stepped to the right towards the hood. And that's when he fired the shots across the hood. You have, when the shots ring out, Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis, two sisters, they were in this house. Now, this is the same house, but they were in this house right here. They both came to the front door right here. When they get to the front door, the first thing they see is Hella Markham across the street. And she's screaming, he killed that man, he shot that man. That's what they hear Hella Markham saying. So then they refocus their attention, and they literally see Oswald cutting across the yard at this angle right here. She said literally that he was on the walkway that goes from the sidewalk to our front porch. So he was cutting across right here. When Markham yelled, Barbara Davis said he looked over at Markham. He looked over at her, and then he looked back at Barbara Davis and kind of got that smile on his face, jumped the hedge, because there's all hedges over there, jumped the hedge and took off, all right? So you have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. They begin to leave their yard down there on the other side of Denver to come down here. So they just now start to leave the yard, all right? When Oswald gets over here, so Barbara Davis says he was fooling with the gun, like he was unloading the revolver or loading it, either one. He jumps the hedge. Now William Scoggins is sitting right here, and I'm going to go over what all these witnesses said as far as identification when it's all done. So Scoggins is sitting right here.
You're good, man.
See that great building down here with the doors up by the sidewalk? That's the same building. That was the Gentleman's Club in 1963, where he was in there getting his lunch and watching the news on TV. Came back to his cabin sitting right here. He testified that the gunman did not walk in front of his cab. However, the patrol car cruised slowly past the intersection. So if you listen to Scoggins, there's no way Oswald was walking that way. He was walking from west to east, which coincides with what Jimmy Burt said he saw, was the guy was walking this way from a block down.
Markham didn't see him go this way either.
What's that?
Markham didn't see him go this way either.
Yeah, Markham was coming all the whole block. That's right. She did not see Oswald at all, or the killer, the gunman, until the police officer pulled him over is the first time Helen Markham actually noticed the man even walking on the sidewalk anyway. So Scoggins is right here.
Scoggins and Markham both saw him facing west, but looking at the squad car. Not necessarily walking, just facing.
Because they saw him turn to go back to the car, perhaps.
Yeah.
So Scoggins hears, he sees the patrol car, and he kind of watches, takes a bite of a sandwich, and he sees the door to Tippit's patrol car open, and he sees the officer start to get out. He sees Tippit start to get out. He continues eating his lunch, no big deal. And that's when he hears the shots. All right. And he says, I might have looked up and seen the officer fall. I can't be sure, but I feel like I saw him fall or something like that. So he says the next thing I see, because he couldn't see the gunman during the shooting. So the next thing I see is he's coming straight at my position. So I always thought, a situation like that happens, don't stay in the cab. He can commandeer the cab, hijack the cab, because I wanted to separate myself from that cab. So he gets out and he literally runs across the street. He runs across the street and he's looking for a place to hide. He decides there's nowhere to go. His best bet, he returns back to the cab and he's ducking down right here. And that's the point where Oswald, or the gunman, is cutting across the yard right here.
Maybe there's a car.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred.
So the gunman's cutting across the yard. Scoggins is ducking down behind the cab and he sees him. And this is the point where you guys have heard the poor damn cop, poor dumb cop. It was that moment. And he said that he said it twice, but he didn't know if he said poor damn cop or poor dumb cop, but he said it twice. So I'm going to pause for a second and go over the witnesses here. So you got Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith down there. Now Jimmy Burt never made an identification one way or the other, whether it was Lee Oswald or anybody else. Said he couldn't be sure one way or the other. Bill Smith, in the Warren Commission testimony, mentioned the name Oswald, so he identifies Oswald. Domingo Benavides, who pulled the pickup truck over, they came to get him when they came to get a couple of other witnesses down the street here. Benavides told him he declined to attend a lineup because he felt like he didn't get good enough look at the guy to actually make an identification one way or the other. So he never picked anybody out. However, Helen Markham and both of the Davis sisters they attended a lineup along with William Scoggins, the cab driver, and two more witnesses down the street, which we'll get to in a second. And they all positively identified Oswald as the gunman at the police lineup. So now you have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith are coming towards the direction of the patrol car. You have Benavides still in his truck. You have Helen Markham on the corner, screaming, covering her face. Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis are right there in the house. They're still watching the guy cut across the yard. And now you have down here, this is the Dukes Motor Company, which is where Ted Calloway and Sam Ginyard worked. Now Oswald, Ted Calloway said when he heard the shots, he was in the office in the middle of the lot. He heard the shots. He went out to the sidewalk, and Sam Ginyard was already at the sidewalk washing cars. So Oswald, when he cuts across the yard here, all right, first thing he's going to notice are Ginyard and then Calloway standing out here by the sidewalk. His natural tendency is to cross the street and get separation. He doesn't want to run right past those guys, literally within 2 feet of them. So he crosses the street, and he's now running south on Patton. Now remember, Benavides is just now starting to get courage to maybe get out of his truck. Markham starts to go over to Tippit's patrol car. Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith are on their way to the patrol car. The Davis sisters are still on the porch because they haven't left the porch yet. So Oswald is now, and he's running with the revolver up in the air. Right here, on the other side of this alley, is where Sam Ginyard was. So Oswald gets to about, it's kind of like we're moving slower than he was, so I got to talk slow. So right here where this blue fence is, on the other side of this white pickup truck right now, that's where Sam Ginyard was. And Fred, we got to address something later, but I'll do it later, as far as something I told you before. So Sam Ginyard is right here washing a car. Oswald's here. He keeps on going. Now, see this yellow post right here? That's about where the point where Calloway came out and is on the sidewalk, right here where this yellow post is, because he came from his office there. So when Oswald gets about to this point right ahead of me here, still running, he's still fumbling with the revolver, okay? That's when he's got the revolver up in his hand pointing to the sky. That's when Calloway says, hey man, supposedly he says, hey man, what the hell's going on? And Calloway said that he thought maybe he was some kind of a security or detective. He said, I didn't know that he had just shot a police officer. I never actually would have yelled at him. So Calloway's right here, straight across here. You got Gainer's back there. Now by this point, the Davis sisters have now left the porch because there's other people now starting to mill around the patrol car. So they get the courage now to come down off the porch because they're scared to death. They go over to the patrol car after calling the police. Barbara Davis called the police first, then she leaves the house, goes over to the patrol car. Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith have now gotten pretty close to the patrol car. Markham's already over there. Other people from across the street have come out. All right. So Oswald is now running south here. He starts to fumble with the gun again. Now there's 4 witnesses over here. If you look at this pink building here on the corner, across the street and to the left right here, that wasn't there in '63. It was a little 2-story building, and it was called the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company. And in that building on the 2nd floor was Warren Reynolds, Pat Patterson, Harold Russell, and L.J. Lewis. Now, they heard, all 4 of them heard the shots. They were all on the 2nd floor in Warren Reynolds' office. Warren Reynolds is the first one out onto the patio, 2nd floor, and he looks up the street. One of them made the comment that literally, because they were watching the news on the assassination, one of them made a comment like maybe they have the guy cornered up the street, thinking the assassin, because he heard it was obvious gunshots. So they all. So you got Warren Reynolds, the first one on the porch. Then you got the other 3 soon behind him. And now all four of them, to a man, saw the gunman running down this side of the street, fumbling with the revolver. They said, we didn't know, all 4 of them said, I don't know if he was loading it or unloading it, but a couple of them actually saw him throw a shell down. Now keep in mind, I think there's a missing shell and a missing bullet, all right? So Harold Russell says he saw the man running down the street, fumble with the gun, and when he got to the corner, he literally stopped, put the revolver in his waistband, and then started walking west on Jefferson, almost like running, put it away, and start walking. Because he changed streets, tried to change his demeanor. So Harold Russell left. They all went downstairs. Russell comes up the street and he's on the scene when the police arrive. Now Ted Calloway has now left his position, which is right here. He goes up the street. Once he saw the gunman get to the corner, Calloway goes up the street. And he takes a right, and actually he goes to the patrol car and starts to key in to report the shooting, but he didn't know that Domingo Benavides had already done it. While Calloway's still standing here watching the killer come down the street, Benavides gets out and starts fumbling with the key on the mic. He didn't know how to use it though. So TF Bally pulls up. Bally comes over and takes the mic from Benavides, and Bally is actually the one you hear report the shooting on the police tapes. And the famous reporting you've all heard, that's Bally. So then Calloway gets up there not knowing Bally had already done it. So in the meantime, the police dispatch, they dispatch the ambulance right over here, which is just around the corner right here at the Dudley Hughes Funeral Home. The ambulance literally gets there in like less than just under a minute. That's all it took them. Eddie Kensley and Butler, J.C. Butler. So while the ambulance is approaching, Calloway's actually trying to report the shooting. He's actually on the phone, on the mic, talking to dispatch, and that's what they said. Stay off the radio now. We already had the word of the shooting. So now you got the killer coming down. So Russell, who was in the Reynolds Motor Company, goes up the street. L.J. Lewis stayed there, went inside, called the police. Once he came out and saw the gunman running, with a gun in his hand, fumbling with it, he goes back inside and calls the police. The other 2 fellas were Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson. So let's go over here. So you have the gunman coming straight down the street right here. Now while he's right here, this is when he's fumbling with the gun, reloading it or unloading it still. And they're right there. It's a small building right there on the corner. They're watching the whole thing go down. And all four of them said he was fumbling with the gun. Like I said, I want to keep saying that because it's important. It's not an automatic weapon. He's literally unloading the weapon himself. And one bullet, I think one shell got kind of stuck in there and he had to wedge it out, in my opinion, which is why he was still fumbling with that one last shell all the way down here, because the other 4 shells were found up there on the corner. So he puts the gun in his waistband. and starts to walk in this direction. All right. Now you got Harold Wilson went up the street. He was on the scene when the police got there. Jose Lewis goes inside and calls the police. You've already got the police, the shooting reported by the guys, two different people up there. And Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson decide at Warren Reynolds' suggestion, let's follow the guy. So they come out, and they're on this side of the street. They're on the south side of Jefferson. The killer, the gunman, is on this side of Jefferson. He's going this way. Well, they start to follow him from over here. Who knows if Oswald was oblivious to whether they were following him or not. But they didn't. So they're following from a discrete distance, put it that way. So now at this point, here's where you have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. These are the two guys that were on the other side of Denver. They were a block east of the shooting. All right. They decide that they're going to go on foot in search of the gunman. So they begin to run from the patrol car west on 10th to the corner of 10th and Patton. Russell is now starting by this point to head up the street. Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson are over here. Okay. Now, by the way, this Marr Brothers was here in '63. Also, that's an original sign, by the way. The sign back there, it's an original sign. Yeah, I'm going to stop right here and let them catch up because I'm going to say something about this right here. The Dudley.
That's the ambulance.
It was called Dudley Hughes Funeral Home. That's where the ambulance came from.
Right.
The ambulance was right there. Took 1 minute to get to the scene, just under a minute.
Tippett's funeral in that building?
No. That was at the Beverly Hills Baptist Church for the south.
Oh, okay.
So about this point, you have Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson over here. They think they're going to follow the guy. Well, back in 1963, the Santos right here. Santos was the Texaco station. Now, beside the Texaco station on this side, there were two antique houses, two old houses, and
Furniture store.
What's that?
Furniture store.
Yeah, they were like old antique furniture, old rackety shacks that eventually got torn down later that spring. So they said that the gunman cut through. These two houses were sitting right here. One was here, and one was here. Now in '63, right here. It was called Dean's Dairy. It was a little convenience store called Dean's Dairy. And then beside Dean's Dairy, you had these two houses that were old shacks, and then you had the Texaco station. Well, at some point, Oswald cuts through the two houses. That's why Warren Reynolds thought that he was actually in one of these two houses. So Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson, at this point, they lose sight of him. They go back up to 10th and Patton to see what had happened. And it's at that point that they learned that the man that they were following had killed a police officer. They then decide, well, let's go back down there then, because it doesn't take about a minute or two to get up there, a minute or two to get back. So, and the reason I say they went up to the scene first, so they get to the Texaco station right here, and Mary Brock and Robert Brock was a mechanic. So Mary Brock told the FBI that it was about 5 minutes after the man passed that these other two fellows come up and asked me, if I'd seen him or not. They didn't ask right away. So the 5 minutes gives time for Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson to go up and come back down, because Warren Reynolds told him he didn't shut up. How was Warren Reynolds know that? At that point, he went nowhere knowing that, so he went up there and came back. So Reynolds lost sight of the fleeing gunman. He made an assumption that he was in these two buildings right here. So the police, believing him, because he swore to him, he's in here, don't leave, he's definitely in here. And so they searched these two. You see in the news footage, Ron Reilly footage, you can see him searching these buildings. Wasn't in here because Warren Reynolds didn't realize at the time, but the killer, and this is what Mary Brock said, and she identified the man as Oswald. She said he went past her wearing a jacket to the parking lot behind. So obviously so let's go behind the Texaco station, which is now it's now Santos Muffler. Now I want to stop you guys for a second. Actually, at this point now, you have Eddie Kinsley and J.C. Butler. They were the ambulance drivers. They started to load the body and take off with the body. All right. Police are already on the scene now. Kenneth Croy's on the scene. This is the point where Ted Calloway starts to get the idea in his head to go in search of the killer with William Scoggins. So he kind of gets the idea to start to recruit Scoggins and the cab to go looking for the guy. So now Mary Brock is Mary Brock's right here. She told the FBI that the man came running past her and went to the parking lot behind the service station. He said he was wearing the jacket. So I don't want to cut through their property, so we'll just go down and go up. Yeah. And again, this Santos was the Texaco. This wasn't a muffler shop.
Life Church is gone.
Yeah,
when
it's
they turned up.
Long time ago. Road rage.
What's going on here? A little road rage going on.
So this is the parking lot right here. For those who've never been here before, I know most of you have. This is the parking lot where the jacket was found, underneath one of the cars. Now, as far as the jacket goes, I'm not going to get into great detail about it, but there's an FBI report that states that there were microscopic fibers removed from one of the sleeves of the jacket. They were tested to test fibers removed from all those sleeves. And when you compare fibers through forensics, there's three characteristics you look for: color, shade, and twist. And the fibers found in the jacket and the fibers taken from the shirt, according to this FBI report, said that the fibers were the exact same color, shade, and twist as each other. Now, so they were, in other words, they were matched. Now, that doesn't mean that the fibers came from that shirt, but it means they were the exact same fibers, regardless. They had the same color, the same shade, and the same twist. So there was no fence here in 1963. It was open. It was a dirt lot. Jacket's laying under the car. Now here's where I think it gets interesting. Remember, Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith were a block east. Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith were a block east of 10th and Patton. After the shooting, they made their way to the patrol car. They said they stayed around for a little bit looking down at the body, and then they get the idea in their head that they're going to go in search of the killer. So now 10th and Patton is up here. It's a half block up further still. So as they are running down, Patton, and they literally stated, we had in our heads that we were going to go all the way down to Jefferson. But when we got to the alley, we stopped and we looked west along the alley. He goes, and we saw the man in the alley. So obviously he dissed his jacket. They see him in the alley right here. Okay, they said he was almost to the next street, so almost to the street here. So he was basically in the alley here somewhere, just having got rid of the jacket. They said at that point, and they said at that point we decided, because it's almost like they lost their courage, because they decided upon seeing him not to chase him anymore. So they stopped. They went back up. Now, if you guys ever listen to reports of Helen Markham, she has all kinds of varying opinions that she gives on which way the killer fled the scene. Have you guys ever? You know how she gives like 2 or 3 different accounts? So like 1 minute she says he went down, all the way down, the next minute he cut across the yard, he cut through the alley. So the reason I believe that Helen Markham said he originally she said he went all the way down, but then later she says, like in the 70s and 80s, he cut across the alley. So Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith, remember, they saw the killer in the alley.
One of them was AWOL, too.
Yeah, Jimmy Burt. He was AWOL from the Army.
So he wasn't real anxious to...
Yeah, right. So Bill Smith was buddies with James Markham, Helen Markham's son. Bill Smith and Jimmy Burt were both 20. I don't know how old James Markham was, but about the same age, I'm sure. Well, so think about this now. You have Helen Markham telling a story to family and friends later. You have her son James talking back to her about what his friends told him. Well, I guarantee you that Bill Smith, who's buddy with James Markham, said he cut down the alley, because Bill Smith and Jimmy Burt probably really thought that he did cut through the alley, but he didn't, because you have Harold Russell, L.J. Lewis, Pat Patterson, Warren Reynolds, all four see him go all the way down to the corner and then tuck it, all four of them, and then start walking west on Jefferson. So
anyone would think that. If
yeah,
they saw him down there
these two
coming
guys,
this way. It makes perfect sense.
Natural
Yeah.
assumption. So now you have Helen Markham hearing from her son that he cut through the alley, and she lets that influence her in later stories. I hope you guys follow what I'm saying there. So that's at this point, who knows? It's not worth me saying. There's nobody knows anymore what Oswald did after this, whether he went through the alley, went back down to Jefferson, or went on up to 10th and kept going. Yeah, the Abundant Life Temple was right here. Mm-hmm. Now, right where this baseball field is where the Abundant Life Temple was, and the officers gave up on the search and those two houses because there was nothing in there. So they start to go to the Abundant Life Temple. It's at this point, when they get to the Abundant Life Temple, they start to go in when they get word that the suspect is holed up in the library, the Jefferson Branch Library. So they hightail it over to the library, which is over this way, right, Joseph? Yeah, the library's over there. And at that point, Abundant Life Temple's forgotten. So a lot of conspiracy people like to argue that he was hiding in the Abundant Life Temple after leaving the alley. But who really knows what he did? He's not seen until he's seen by Johnny Brewer. So let's walk back through the alley. And then I'm gonna close. What's that? Yeah.
You got a speculation which way he would go?
In my opinion,
right down
I think
the alley.
he's going down the alley.
That's what I would
but that's
think.
only my opinion. I have nothing to base it on. If I were him, I don't know about you guys, but I think I would just stay in the alley for a while. Like we were talking about, like don't walk down Beckley. We were talking about that earlier. I'd cut through the alley. I don't know if you guys.
Well, by that time the cop cars were on Jefferson.
They were racing up and down Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
And again, you got to keep in mind he's been on foot this whole time. He has no idea if his face is on the news right now. He doesn't know. It wasn't, but he doesn't know that.
But at some point, he crossed back over to Jefferson. We just don't know where.
He makes his way down to Jefferson because he's seen by Johnny Brewer at the shoe store, obviously. But at what point he makes his way down to Jefferson, who knows? Yeah. It's about 5 blocks down. And then the theater's like 3/4 of the block past it. We're going to go down there. We're not going to walk down here. We'll drive down there. Yeah.
Going down this way, he could have passed Brewer's shoe store and gone in through a breezeway that I've told Steve
I've
Rowe
been in there,
and
yeah.
F.J. James about, that has passed it. That when you look at the Texas Theater, back in 1963, there was a furniture store right beside it. Right at the end of that is a breezeway that goes into the back so people could cut through instead of having to go around the block. He could have come down the alleyway, gone to that, and gone to it. So that's not 100% proof that he went back at it sometime.
See, he would have to know about it, though.
He could have discovered it.
He lived down there in a couple of different houses. He lived down in the Ellsworth apartment,
Yeah, that's
Neely Street, Beckley.
We knew this
And
area.
if he went there on any type of regular thing, he would know that there's a back entrance to be able to go that way, so he wouldn't have to
People
walk
use
this
it,
way down.
because
It was a normal way because
back there.
parking was back here. Because if
walk
you got
through
Jefferson
the breezeway,
Boulevard like this, and all the cars are parked like this, but then you got it deviated about 700 people.
Nice one, Joseph finish.
4% battery. Forgot to charge that crash. Did he tell you about last night?
Is the sun okay? The sun okay this way?
Yeah.
I don't want to stand that way.
Yeah, you saved the day, man.
Yeah, you were my hero last night.
It was a great.
So let me jump in here, guys. So let me jump in here.
I got to get rid of this sweater.
We're gonna wait till this guy goes by for sure.
For lunch. What about there's Mexican place down the street called
Sounds good to go.
So what you guys have here? You have Jimmy Burt and Bill Smith. You have Domingo Benavides. You have Barbara Davis, Virginia Davis. You have Helen Markham, William Scoggins. That's all at 10th and Patton and going over. Then you going down Patton, you have Sam Ginyard, Ted Calloway, and then at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company, you have L.J. Lewis, Harold Russell, Pat Patterson, Warren Reynolds, and then at the Texaco station right here, you have Robert Brock and Mary Brock. So you have 15 people that saw Oswald, or saw the person. Yeah, let me rephrase that. You have 15 people who saw the person. So here's the interesting thing, though, to me, because of those 15 people, 11 of them, you have, I'll break it down. You have Bill Smith in his Warren Commission testimony said it was Oswald. You have Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis attend the lineup. They both picked Oswald to the lineup. You have Helen Markham attend the lineup. She picked Oswald. You have Ted Calloway and Sam Ginyard attend the lineup. They both picked Oswald. And William Scoggins, I don't know if I mentioned Scoggins, but he attended the lineup and picked Oswald. Then you have the 4 men at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company. Now, L.J. Lewis, the fellow that went inside to call the police, the FBI came out and talked to all 4 of them. L.J. Lewis said, I can't say if it was Oswald. He was shown photos, so I can't say if it was Oswald or not. I honestly can't say. However, Warren Reynolds, Pat Patterson, Harold Russell, all 3 saw the photos and identified Oswald. According to the FBI reports, they all 3 identified Oswald as the man they saw running down the street with the gun. Okay. Robert Brock couldn't make identification. He told the FBI, I can't decide one way or the other. Mary Brock said it was Oswald. And I don't know if I left any of them out. I think I covered it. So you have 15 people. 11 of them made positive identifications. And I'm only, you guys can spin it. That's fine. But these are facts if you look at the FBI reports. 11, or read the testimony, or look at the lineups. 11 people of the 15 said the man was Oswald. 4 of the 15, that's Robert Brock, Jimmy Burt, L.J. Lewis, and Domingo Benavides, said they couldn't really determine one way or the other. But you have 0 out of the 15 said it was not Oswald. And I think that's important. Okay. Now, one last thing, and then I'm pretty much done. So you have some people will argue that, well, the guys at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company, L.J. Lewis, Pat Patterson, Warren Reynolds, Harold Russell, you have Sam Ginyard and Ted Calloway on Patton. They didn't see the shooting. How can you say they saw the shooter? The thing is, Helen Markham standing right there on the corner, she saw the shooting. She saw Oswald. She picked Oswald out of a lineup. The guy that cut across the yard was the same guy Helen Markham was watching do this. So the guy that cuts across the yard and starts running south on Patton, seen by Ted Calloway and Sam Ginyard, all right, is the same guy that Markham saw. So Ted Calloway and Sam Ginyard didn't see the shooting, but they most definitely saw the shooter because it was the same guy that Markham still had her visions. She followed him. So you can, so the witnesses, let's put it this way, the gunman gets passed off from one set of witnesses to the next. There's never any time when he's not seen by anybody where the guy could have ended up being somebody else. He gets passed off nonstop from one set of witnesses to the next, all the way down to the Texaco station. And so even Mary, well, we won't count Mary Brock, but even Warren Reynolds and Pat Patterson, who followed him for a ways, they didn't see the shooting. They were blocked south, but they saw the shooter. So that's pretty much it. Bottom line is that 15 people saw it or heard the shots and saw the man. 11 of them said it was Lee Oswald. Whether it be FBI reports, Warren Commission testimony, or police lineups, 11 of them said it was Oswald. And then 4 out of 15 couldn't make a decision. 0 out of the 15 said it wasn't Oswald.
You have the corroborating physical evidence of him having possession of the weapon that was used.
Right. Yeah, I was just wanting to talk about all this. Yeah, well, obviously he's arrested at the theater with the revolver. Now, real quickly, I will address the shells. So, Domingo Benavides gets out, and he says that, basically he says that they weren't finding the shells. I knew where some shells were, and I thought they gonna leave them there. So he, basically, I'm ad-libbing, but he runs over there and he gets 2 of the shells and he gives them to Poe, Officer Joe Poe. And about 2 o'clock that afternoon, when the authorities are still on the scene, Barbara Davis finds a shell on the ground. And I was going to let you say this again, but I'm going to save you the embarrassment, because she didn't pick up the shell and hold it in her hand. She pointed it out to George Doty, the head of the. But you said she held it. You told me, but she held it in her hand. She held it in her hand. She didn't. She said, "There's
the other sister."
Yes.
Put it on the mantle.
So Barbara Davis calls over Captain George Doty. He was the head of the crime lab. He comes over, picks the shell up. He puts his initials in it, GD, and he turns it over to Pete Barnes of the crime lab, who was right there dusting the patrol car for prints. Pete Barnes was also with the crime lab, but Doty was his boss. And then about 6 o'clock that evening, Virginia Davis finds a shell about 5 feet down from the one Barbara Davis found. So Barbara Davis calls the police, hey, my sister-in-law found another shell. It's when the police, so Doherty, Detectives Doherty and Brown, they get dispatched down to pick up not only the shell, but also to pick up, this is when they took Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis to the lineup. So the shells, all 4 shells were linked through ballistics to the revolver taken from Oswald when he was arrested in the Texas Theater, to exclusion of all other weapons in the world. Now you guys can argue if you want to about chain of custody and chain of possession and all that, but there's no problem whatsoever with the chain of possession of the 2 shells found by the Davis girls. Chain of possession begins when law enforcement takes over, am I right? When law enforcement takes over a piece of evidence, that's when the chain of possession begins.
Yep.
Okay, so there's no, what?
How about the wallet?
Yeah, well, there's nothing to say about it. There's nothing to say about the wallet. I mean, we can all speculate. We can all speculate whether, whatever. I don't have anything to say about the wallet, really. That's just my opinion, wasting time. Anyway, the shells.
Two brands of shells too.
Yeah.
Peters, remember?
Yeah. So yeah. You had
And he had the same.
yeah. One last thing, and I'm actually going to stop. So, but I'd love to answer questions if you guys have any. So, the shells found at the scene, I'm glad you mentioned that, because they were Remington Peters as well as Winchester Westerns. So let's just say Remingtons and Winchesters. This is important. This is probably the most important thing. When Oswald was arrested, he had the same exact mix and match of brands in his revolver and in his front pocket on his left side as the shells found at the scene. He didn't have more than the Remingtons and Winchesters. He didn't have more. He didn't have like a third brand, but he had both of those. So I think that's very telling. That's a hell of a coincidence. If he's at the Texas Theater and did not shoot, it's the same exact mix and match that he had on him as found at the scene. There's no getting around that. So
that they claimed he had on him, because they weren't found until they found the bus sheet.
so you're talking about the ones found in his pocket, which you're right, they were found, but they immediately found the ones in his revolver.
No.
Well,
whatever's in the revolver is a separate issue. As far as the bullets that they say were in his pocket, that were found with the bus slip hours after arrested, when they should have been found when he was first
I
arrested.
agree. I think every single one of us here are mystified with the fact that 2 hours later, Oswald still has live rounds in his pants pocket. That's crazy. So, I mean, you can speculate or you can actually accuse.
It's just poor police work.
Exactly. A horrible police work. That never should have happened.
And that's no crime, and it's nothing that can be used against any.
Yeah. But does it mean anything, Joseph? Does it mean that they planted those shells?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is there isn't a single bit of ballistics evidence at the Rumen House or Irving residence except for the holster, which is kind of strange. Why, if you have a holster, why wouldn't you use a holster? What's the purpose of buying one? That's like want to buy the scope for a rifle when you're trained on iron sights and you don't need to do it. And you should have bought bullets with the rifle. You could have bought, for the same amount he paid for the scope, he could have bought 109 rounds of ammunition.
But what does it all mean, though? Really, what does it all mean?
If there was Remington Peters and what's the other
Winchester Westerns
at the scene, and he happened to have the same thing in his weapon, if those were planted at the scene, then they must have got really lucky to find those in the weapon.
It was exactly.
But why didn't they find a single piece of ballistic evidence other than the holster at the Rumen House or Irving?
But what does it mean, though?
Because he didn't leave any there.
Well, how do you have a box of Remington? How do you have a box of Winchester? How do you have at least one box of Carcano? They come in boxes. Not a single box is found. Not a single extra bullet is found. Not any kind of cleaning device is found.
He may have thrown them away when he went after Walker. Like he didn't want it to be found at his residence.
Okay, that was back in March. So we're going 6 months without the
he
tools to be able to do it. Good.
He could still have the bullets and just get rid of the boxes.
Why do that?
So 3 Winchesters were found of the bullets. Of the bullets taken from Tippett's body, you had 3 Winchesters and 1 Remington removed from Tippett's body. Of the shells found at the scene, you had 2 Westerns and 2 Remingtons. The Winchesters, you had 2 and 2 of the shells, 3 and 1 of the bullets. So obviously you guys all know by now that they're hypothesizing. The House Select Committee on Assassinations actually brought forward the idea, and it's been jumped on by a lot since, that Oswald could have fired a 5th shot. Okay, so you have 3 Remington bullets taken from Tippett's body, but only 2 Remington shells were found. So
missing
third missing shell, Remington shell. Could have been the one that he was still struggling with as he was making his way damn near to the corner. That the four fellas in the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company said he was still fumbling with the revolver. Whether he's one of them actually said he saw it throw a shell down. So, and Ted Calloway, who I consider the best Tippit witness, I don't rely on Martin. Yep. Ted Calloway said for a fact that there were 5 shots, and they came to him when they had only found the original 2 Poe shells that Benavides turned over to Poe. Calloway said, "No, I heard 5, and if you guys keep looking, you'll find 3 more."
Morse code.
So then, so Barbara Davis finds the one that she turns over to Doty, and Calloway says, "I'm telling you guys, if you keep looking, you'll find 2 more." And so Calloway was insistent that there were 5 shots, and then he told Dale Myers that when he was in the Marine Corps, he studied Morse code, and what he told Dale Myers was that I heard the 5 shots. It was dot dot tat tat tat. It was all 5 shots that fast, but it was dot dot tat tat tat. He goes, and that rings in my head, that Morse code, that dot dot tat tat tat. He goes, I know there was 5 shots. So there definitely, if he's right, there's a missing bullet and a missing shell that were never found.
Now, the 6-shot revolver, right?
Right.
So,
and when he was arrested, the revolver was fully loaded again. Yep.
So he had the extra rounds with
Right.
him.
Yeah,
And he had in his pocket.
He had
more
for the 5th shot.
No, I ain't talking about that. I don't believe it.
This is Dave, the insurance guy. What you just watched is a group of individuals that's made up of our Facebook group called JFK Truth Be Told. It's a fairly new group for us. At the time of this recording, it's about a week old. We already have 132 members. I'll put a link in the description. You can take a look at us and hopefully join up with us. Bill Brown, who gave this tour, is one of the founding members of our new group. In fact, he came up with the name JFK Truth Be Told. If you join our group, you can have interactions with Bill. You can ask him questions. You can talk to him about what exactly happened at 10th and Patton. If you think Oswald shot J.D. Tippit, this group is for you. If you think there was just a vast conspiracy, Oswald had nothing to do with it, this group is for you. Or if you're new to the subject and you just haven't made up your mind yet, this group is for you. Take a look at it, join up with us. We'd just love to have you.